Your support matters. With 90% of our viewers yet to subscribe, we need your help to keep creating engaging content. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. Clara stood at the kitchen sink, the warm water running over her hands as she absent-mindedly scrubbed the dishes. The rhythmic sound of water splashing against porcelain was almost soothing, yet her mind was elsewhere. Marcus, her husband of 10 years, had left for work an hour ago, as he always did, rushing out the door in his neatly pressed suit, a briefcase in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Their mornings had become a choreographed dance of routine, one that had lost its passion. As she wiped her hands on a dish towel, Clara couldn't help but reflect on how different things used to be. She remembered the spark that ignited her relationship with Marcus, late-night talks that lasted until dawn, spontaneous weekend getaways, and laughter filling their home. But now, their conversations revolved around bills and schedules, and the laughter had faded into silence. It was on a particularly mundane Tuesday that Julian entered their lives. Hired to clean their home, he arrived with a friendly smile and an infectious energy that immediately brightened the atmosphere. Unlike Marcus, who often appeared preoccupied with work, Julian seemed genuinely interested in connecting with Clara. He asked her about her day, her interests, and even shared a few light-hearted jokes that made her laugh, a sound she realized she hadn't heard in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Julian became a regular presence in their home. Clara found herself looking forward to his visits, the way he would effortlessly engage her in conversation while he worked. He was attentive and kind, and for the first time in years, Clara felt seen. She couldn't help but admire his enthusiasm and the effortless way he navigated a life. One afternoon, while Marcus was working late, Clara and Julian found themselves alone in the living room. They had just finished cleaning, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of fresh flowers Julian had brought. As they sat together, discussing everything from favorite movies to childhood memories, Clara felt a connection that was electric and undeniable. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She was surprised by her own vulnerability, but the words tumbled out before she could stop them. Julian looked at her, his expression softening. "All the time," he admitted, "but it's never too late to change course." His words lingered in the air, and Clara felt a thrill run down her spine. Was it possible to change course? She glanced at Julian, who was so close, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Their eyes locked, and Clara could see a flicker of understanding between them. It was a dangerous moment, one that could either lead to an awakening or a disaster. Days turned into weeks, and the connection between Clara and Julian deepened. They exchanged stories and shared laughter, and Clara found herself confiding in him about her dreams and aspirations, something she hadn't done in years. Julian listened intently, encouraging her to pursue what made her happy. Yet with every moment spent together, Clara felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She was a married woman, and the guilt gnawed at her. But the thrill of their connection was intoxicating, and she often found herself daydreaming about what it would be like to break free from her current life. One evening, after Julian had left, Clara stood in the living room, the silence enveloping her. She picked up a framed photo of her and Marcus from their honeymoon, their faces glowing with love and promise. Tears welled in her eyes as she felt the chasm that had formed between them over the years. Was it too late to rekindle that love, or had they drifted too far apart? As Clara lay in bed that night, she replayed the events of the day in her mind. The laughter, the connection, the fleeting moments of joy that Julian brought into her life. They were intoxicating, but also terrifying. She felt as if she were standing at a crossroads, each path leading to a very different future. The following day, Marcus surprised Clara by coming home early. He entered with a bouquet of flowers, a rare gesture that lit up the room. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," he said, his eyes bright with hope. Clara forced a smile, but inside, the turmoil raged on. As they sat across from each other at the dinner table, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of longing that had taken root in her heart. Marcus was trying, but the connection they once shared felt distant, almost foreign. Meanwhile, Julian's laughter echoed in her mind, reminding her of what she was missing. In the weeks that followed, Clara was faced with a series of choices. Each decision felt monumental, and every moment spent with Julian pulled her further away from the woman she once was. The line between right and wrong began to blur, and the thrill of the unknown beckoned her closer. As Clara stood at the precipice of change, she knew she had to confront her feelings. Would she choose the safety of her marriage, or would she take a leap into the unknown, risking everything for a chance at happiness? The decision loomed before her, and it was only a matter of time before she would have to choose her path. Clara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her seemed both familiar and foreign. The weight of her choices was heavy on her shoulders, and she felt the thrill of excitement mixed with a gnawing guilt. As she brushed her hair, she recalled the last encounter with Julian. They had shared a moment that felt electric, a touch that lingered longer than it should have, a gaze that spoke volumes. It was exhilarating but fraught with risk. In the days that followed, Clara found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. She and Julian began to see each other outside of their cleaning sessions, sharing stolen moments during the day, while Marcus was at work. Their connection deepened, and Clara felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. Julian's laughter filled the void in her heart, and each meeting felt like a breath of fresh air. Yet with every rendezvous, the guilt grew heavier. Clara often found herself looking over her shoulder, haunted by the knowledge that she was betraying Marcus's trust. She loved him, at least she used to, but the routine of their life together had dulled the spark that once ignited their relationship. As the affair progressed, Clara's home life began to unravel. Marcus, ever the devoted husband, noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor. He could sense the distance that had crept into their relationship, but he attributed it to stress from work. He tried to bridge the gap, planning family outings and romantic dinners. Yet Clara found it increasingly difficult to engage. One evening, Marcus surprised her with a weekend getaway, hoping to reignite the flame between them. "I thought we could go back to that cabin by the lake," he suggested, his eyes sparkling with hope. "Just like old times." Clara forced a smile, but inside she felt a pang of dread. The thought of spending an entire weekend away from Julian made her heart race with anxiety. "That sounds nice, but I have a lot of work to catch up on," she replied, her voice lacking conviction. Marcus frowned, disappointment flashing across his face. "Clara, we need this. I need this," he urged softly. "Let's just take a break from everything and focus on us." Clara's heart ached at the sincerity in his voice. She wanted to be the wife Marcus deserved, but the allure of her secret life was intoxicating. It was the first time in years she felt desired, seen, and understood. The internal battle waged on, and she knew she was playing with fire. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in Clara's life escalated. She managed to juggle her time with Julian and her responsibilities at home, but the strain was beginning to show. One afternoon, while Clara was tidying up the living room, Marcus entered, a concerned look on his face. "Clara, can we talk?" he asked, his tone serious. Clara's heart raced as she nodded, dread pooling in her stomach. They sat across from each other on the couch, and Clara could see the worry etched on Marcus's face. "I feel like something's off between us," he began. "You've been distant lately. Is there something you want to talk about?" Clara's breath caught in her throat. The truth hung in the air, but she couldn't bring herself to voice it. Instead, she shook her head. "I'm just busy with everything," she lied, her heart pounding. Marcus reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I love you, Clara. I just want to make sure we're okay. You mean the world to me." Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she felt the weight of his love. She wanted to tell him everything, to confess her struggles and her choices, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she withdrew, nodding silently as Marcus continued to express his concerns. In that moment, Clara felt a crushing realization. The more she kept her feelings hidden, the deeper the chasm between them grew. She was losing herself, and in doing so, she was losing her marriage. The following week, Clara met Julian for their usual afternoon rendezvous. They gathered at a small cafe, a place that felt like their secret haven. As they shared coffee and pastries, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. Julian, oblivious to her internal struggle, laughed and recounted stories from his day. "Clara, you look lost in thought," he said, his brow furrowing with concern. "What's going on?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she finally admitted, her voice trembling. Julian leaned in closer, his expression serious. "You deserve to be happy. If this is what makes you feel alive, then why fight it?" But Clara's heart was heavy with guilt. "What about Marcus? He doesn't deserve this," she replied, tears brimming in her eyes. "Life is messy," Julian said softly. "Sometimes you have to make difficult choices for your own happiness." Clara's heart raced as she contemplated his words. Was she truly willing to risk everything for the thrill of a new connection? Or was she merely running away from confronting the issues in her marriage? That night, after returning home, Clara found herself replaying the day's events in her mind. The laughter, the connection with Julian, and the painful conversation with Marcus haunted her. She lay in bed, unable to sleep, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. As dawn broke, Clara made a decision. She would confront Marcus, no matter how painful it might be. She owed him the truth. Over breakfast, Clara steeled herself, the air thick with tension. Marcus was scanning the morning news, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside her. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke up. "Marcus, we need to talk." He looked up, concern flickering across his face. "About what?" Clara's heart raced as she gathered her thoughts. "About us. About everything." As Clara laid bare her feelings, the reality of her affair weighed heavily on her heart. Marcus listened in stunned silence as she divulged her struggles, her feelings of inadequacy, and the connection she had formed with Julian. When she finally finished, a heavy silence enveloped the room. Marcus's face turned pale, shock and hurt evident in his eyes. "You've been seeing someone else?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Clara admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but I felt so lost, Marcus. I thought I could find myself again." The pain in Marcus's eyes cut through Clara like a knife. "Did you ever think about how this would affect me? Our family?" Clara shook her head, overwhelmed by remorse. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I just felt so alone." The conversation quickly spiraled into a confrontation filled with heartbreak and anger. Marcus expressed his feelings of betrayal and confusion, while Clara faced the consequences of her choices. After everything we've been through, how could you do this to me? Marcus's voice cracked, and Clara could see the hurt etched on his face. I didn't want to fall for Julian, but I felt alive again. I thought that maybe I could find my way back to